A nearly 900-page bill, 4.5 trillion in tax cuts, Elon Musk calling it a disgusting abomination, and Democrats staging an 8-hour biblical filibuster. This is the story of Trump's big beautiful bill, and trust me, it is anything but simple. Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. I'm Delina, and today we're doing a deep dive into what might be the most consequential piece of legislation in years, Trump's one big beautiful bill. And calling it big is a massive understatement. This bill just passed the House on July 3rd by exactly 4 votes, 218 to 214. Every single Democrat voted against it, and even 2 Republicans. Now it's on Trump's desk, ready to be signed into law. But here's the thing. This isn't just another boring political story. This bill affects everything from your taxes to your health care, from electric cars to gambling losses. Yes, gambling losses, and we'll get into that. So buckle up, because we're about to break down 870 pages of legislative chaos into something that actually makes sense. First things first, what exactly is the bill? The One Big Beautiful Bill Act is essentially Trump's domestic policy wish list rolled into one massive package. Think about it as a legislative meal prep. Instead of cooking individual policy dishes, they threw everything into one big giant crock pot and hope for the best. Now let's start with the main course, tax cuts. The centerpiece is extending Trump's 2017 Tax Cuts and Jobs Act, which were set to expire. We're talking about 4.5 trillion in tax cuts over the next decade. To put that in perspective, that's roughly the entire GDP of Germany. Just gone from the government revenue. But wait, there's more. The bill also eliminates taxes on tips and overtime pay. Workers who get tips can deduct up to $25,000 in tip income from their taxes, while overtime workers can deduct up to $12,500. So if you're a server pulling double shifts, this bill might actually be the best bill for you. Corporations aren't left out of this party. They get to keep their tax benefits permanently. The bill also lets businesses immediately write off the cost of building new manufacturing facilities. There are also enhanced tax credits for the semiconductor companies building in the US, because nothing says it's America first like subsidizing the companies that make the chips that go into your cell phones. This is also going to encourage companies to increase their manufacturing plants and attract businesses to come into the United States. On the immigration front, the bill allocates $46.5 million for continuing border wall construction and boosting immigration forces. So here, they're going to complete the construction of the border wall. Like I said, they're putting $4.65 billion for the wall construction, boosting immigration enforcement, which means Border Patrol agents, officers, and ICE is getting a budget increase that's bigger than the entire GDP of some small countries. They're basically getting the military budget of a mid-sized European nation. However, this is what Trump ran on. 80% of the people voted for, across the aisles, where they pulled out that they wanted a handle on immigration. So I think it was 82%. Like I said, this is a bipartisan thing. I think people in the United States wanted there to be control on the border, so he is going big on border control. And then we're talking about military budgets. The budget includes about $150 billion in fresh defense spending over the coming years, because apparently spending more in defense than the next 10 countries combined still isn't enough. But what they're going to do is they're creating this what's called a gold dome, the golden dome, the One Big Beautiful Bill, the Golden Dome. The House passed reconciliation bill will support the building of America's Golden Dome. The missile defense system would strengthen U.S. national security with a comprehensive multi-layered shield that protects against advanced missile threats in a time when countries like Iran have dramatically advanced their hypersonic missile capabilities. And it's essentially going to look like that. It's going to be a one big gold dome over the United States. So now here's where it gets very interesting. The bill includes a $5 trillion debt ceiling increase. That's trillion with a T, tremendously bad fiscal policy and total unsustainable spending. So it's going to actually increase the federal debt $3.3 trillion. This means the U.S. national debt will surpass 40 trillion in the coming years. For context, that's about 120,000 for every single American, including newborns. Now, you might think Democrats oppose this just because Trump's name is on it, but actually they have gone some pretty specific concerns that go beyond Trump derangement syndrome. So the biggest Democratic concern is what they're calling the Medicaid massacre. So here we got our Medicaid. The House version includes nearly $800 billion in cuts to Medicaid over a decade. The Senate version pushed it to $930 billion. So let's put that into perspective. $930 billion is more than the entire annual budget of most countries. That's like taking the entire economy of the Netherlands and just deleting it from our healthcare system. The bill adds work requirements, meaning adults would need to work, volunteer, or study 80 hours a month to qualify for Medicaid. That's basically a part-time job just to keep your health insurance. The Congressional Budget Office estimates that 10.9 million more people would become uninsured by 2034 under the House version. That's roughly the entire population of Georgia losing their health insurance. The bill also reduces food assistance programs, specifically SNAP, S-N-A-P, formerly known as food stamps. The logic seems to be if people can't afford food, they'll work harder to afford food. Technically a solution, but maybe not the most compassionate one. Republicans argue that SNAP has become too bloated and that 3/4 of able-bodied adults without dependence on SNAP have no earned income. Democrats argue that maybe people aren't working because good jobs are hard to find and not because they're lazy. So, I go back and forth on this one because I think that what's unfortunate is that there are some people out there that either can't get to a job or have small children. It's more expensive for them to be in daycare than to be at home. And there is, I think, a portion of the population that should be getting food stamps, but I also think there's also a large percentage of that population within that food stamp regime that should not, are just abusing the system. And it's unfortunate that a few that abuse the system are ruining it for actually those that really do need it. Democratic leader Hakeem Jeffries decided to protest this bill in the most democratic way possible by talking about it a lot for over 8 hours straight, setting a new C-SPAN record. 8 hours, that's longer than most people work in a workday, just standing there talking about it, which I don't think is the most effective way to get your point across. Jeffries quoted Matthew 25, referencing Jesus' teachings about caring for the hungry and sick. He called it the one big ugly bill instead of beautiful, because apparently nothing says I disagree with your policy like a biblical filibuster that lasts longer than 8 hours. I think that obviously people's attention spans is like 20 minutes at most. So I'm not sure he got much with his big filibuster. But here's something that should worry everyone. The bill's changes to how states can tax healthcare providers could force rural hospitals to close. We're talking about hospitals that serve communities where the next nearest hospital is hours away. Senator Susan Collins from Maine wanted a $100 billion fund to protect rural hospitals. She got $15 billion. I've heard that they are taking into consideration, and when they do these cuts, that they will be taking into consideration the rural hospitals. I believe they will not be affected, but I guess time will tell. Now let's talk about the most unexpected plot twist in this entire story. Elon Musk, very public, very dramatic opposition to a bill that gives massive tax rates to rich people. It's like watching a vampire complain that he's getting too much blood. On June 3rd, Musk unleashed on Twitter, X, or whatever you call it. He's calling this bill a disgusting abomination and saying it was massive, outrageous pork-filled. He added, shame on those who voted for it. You know you did wrong. But it gets better. He followed up with, in November next year, we fire all politicians who betrayed the American people because nothing says I'm not involved in politics anymore than threatening politicians. He also sent out on his feed, his X feed, that he was talking about starting a party for the people. So, and I saw it. I don't know how far along it was or how many people had actually participated in the poll, but I think there was 60% of the people were polled were all for a party for the people. So it will be interesting if he does take all his money and create his own political party. I would not put anything past Elon Musk of what he can do or not do. So why is the richest man in the world having a public meltdown about a bill that benefits wealthy people? Well, it turns out it's not about principle, it's about profit. According to sources close to the situation, Musk was frustrated for several very specific reasons. First, the bill cuts the electric vehicle tax credit that helps companies like Tesla sell cars. Musk had spent at least $240,000 lobbying to keep this credit, but Republicans decided electric vehicle subsidies were too woke. I think that they should not have got rid of those tax credits. I think there should be an encouragement to go to electric vehicles. However, I don't think that the infrastructure is there in the United States is to have them on the scale that everybody goes electric. And I don't think it was going to that, but I do think that there should be some kind of subsidies for them, because there are subsidies, and that was part of his complaint, is that they are subsidies for other programs, such as gas, pharmaceuticals. Second, Musk wanted the FAA to use his Starlink system for air traffic control. That didn't happen either. So basically, Elon wanted the government to be his customer. And I don't think it was just that. I think that Elon Musk is also talking about the infrastructure at the FAA, that they have not had upgrades to their system in over 30 years. And I think that is showing. I think there needs to be a lot of changes at the FAA. I have a son that's training to be a pilot right now with one of the major airlines, and it worries me all the time. And to have that, I see what's going on, especially with the air traffic controllers and things like that. I think that there needs to be a 100% overhaul. Outdated systems are not going to work, especially going forward. They do need to put money into the FAA. I think that Musk wanting Starlink, I think because Starlink is a very reliable system, he has, all the credit to Musk, he has brought Starlink to Ukraine, third world countries, and countries that would never have be able to get the internet service that he's provided. So I say kudos to Elon Musk for providing free internet to those that can't afford it or don't have access to it. And so that brings me to Doge. Where Musk was leading. He promised to cut $1 trillion from the federal budget, and he actually did cut, but not enough. He worked there for 130 days. Musk also couldn't extend his White House advisory role because the 130-day limit, apparently even government efficiency has its term limits. I think that what frustrated Musk the most was that he was spending all this time and energy making tax cuts, and then Trump was turning around and then taking all those tax cuts and spending it in ways that he thought were just unsustainable, which it will be unsustainable. House Speaker Mike Johnson's response was essentially, "Thanks for the $300 million in campaign contributions, Elon, but we're good now." He told reporters, "With all due respect, my friend Elon is terribly wrong when it comes to the One Big Beautiful Bill." Johnson suggested Musk's criticism was related to the EV tax credit, saying, "I know that EV mandate is very important to him, but it's not going away." And that the government subsidies is not something that he's going to get. Well, in translation, we'll take subsidies for oils companies, defense contractors, pharmaceutical companies, but not electric cars. I think that's where Musk is coming from. How come they all have subsidies and he can't get any subsidies for his electric cars? Yeah, that's debatable. The White House was even more dismissive. Press Secretary Karen Leavitt said the president already knows where Elon Musk stood on this bill. It doesn't change. The president's opinion, this is one big beautiful bill, and he's sticking to it. Now let's talk about some of the weird stuff buried in this bill that nobody's really talking about, but probably should be. Tucked in this nearly 900-page bill is a provision that limits gambling tax deductions to 90% of losses starting in 2026. Currently, gamblers can deduct all their losses up to their winnings. This has professional gamblers surprisingly upset. And when people who literally bet money for a living think your bill is bad, maybe that's a bad sign. The provision could actually make gamblers owe taxes in years when they had net losses. It's like being charged for the privilege of losing money. Vegas must be loving this. The bill also creates something called mega accounts for young children. These are essentially tax advantage savings accounts for kids. There's also a new 6,000 senior deduction that's designed to help seniors avoid paying taxes on Social Security benefits. This is actually pretty popular across party lines because apparently everyone agrees that old people shouldn't have to pay more taxes. Unfortunately, it is worth noting that these deductions primarily benefits higher income seniors, not the ones who are choosing between medication and groceries. I had a friend of mine, she was getting some medication for her mom here in the States, and it was so expensive. The doctor told her you should just be getting it out of Canada, and she did. She found a pharmacy in Canada. It got stopped at the border a couple of times, but it was ended up being 20% of the cost than it is here in the States. The bill's treatment of clean energy incentives has been all over the map. Some provisions were added, some were subtracted, then modified so many times that solar stocks have been completely volatile, up, down, and around. So what's clear is the federal government is moving away from any significant role in renewable energy. Whether that's good or bad depends on your opinion of climate change and apparently your stock portfolio. All right, well, let's cut through all the political bullshit and talk about what this actually means for regular Americans, because at the end of the day, it isn't about politicians or billionaires. It's about real people and real consequences. Let's start with the winners. The top 20% of households. I have a chart here of how the big beautiful bill will affect incomes starting 2027. So those earning more than $217,000 a year will get a tax cut equivalent to 3.4% of their after-tax income. The bottom 20% would get a 0.8% tax cut. So I guess that's different as to what they're already getting now. So if you're making $50,000 a year, you might save a few $100s. If you're making $500,000 a year, you might save tens of thousands of dollars. It's like getting a group of discounts where the people who need it least get the biggest discounts. The highest earners in Wyoming, South Dakota, and Texas could see tax cuts of more than $100,000. That's more than many people make in 2 years, just back into their pockets. Now for the not so good news. Many people at the lowest end of the income ladder would be worse off because of cuts to safety net programs. If you're on Medicaid, you might have to prove you're working 80 hours a month to keep your health insurance. If you're on SNAP, you might face stricter work requirements. If you depend on these programs, this bill could literally be a matter of life and death. For middle-class families, it's complicated. You might get some tax relief, but you'll also be paying for those cuts through higher deficits and potential reduced services. So there is that. It's getting a discount on your grocery bill, then finding out they're closing the fire department to pay for it. I think these will be in extreme cases. I don't think it's ever going to come to that. I think that everything will work out. I don't think they're going to be closing fire departments for subsidized groceries at all. The Congressional Budget Office estimates the bill will add between 2.4 and 3.8 trillion to the national debt over the next decade. That's more money, and future generations will have to pay back with interest. Now let's talk about how legislative action actually got made, because the process was almost as messy as the final product. The House stayed in session overnight, literally all night, to get this passed before Trump's July 4th deadline. Speaker Johnson had to convince holdouts in his own party, whittling down over 24 GOP holdouts to just 2 by the final vote. Nothing says this is well-considered legislation like having to bribe your own party members to vote for it at all until 3 a.m. in the morning. The Senate had already passed their version, but they made changes that increased the deficit impact by nearly $1 trillion. But apparently when you're already spending trillions and trillions of dollars, why not add another $1 trillion? The Senate version had to overcome several Republican holdouts who were concerned about fiscal impact. Senator Tom Tillis from North Carolina even announced he wouldn't run for re-election after voicing concerns over the bill. Trump demanded this bill be passed by July 4th because nothing says Independence Day like signing legislation that makes the country more dependent on borrowing money from other countries. Yeah. The symbolism is perfect, actually. We're celebrating our Independence Day by mortgaging our future. And we're also passing on this debt to our children. So here's where we stand. Trump will sign this bill into law on Friday, July 4th at 5 p.m. In a White House ceremony. Press Secretary Leavitt announced that this bill is going to create an economic boom for the United States of America. Whether that boom is economic growth or the sound of the deficit exploding remains to be seen. Hopefully, this will have whole upkick in the economy. The big beautiful bill is a perfect example of how politics works in 2025. It's a massive piece of legislation that will fundamentally reshape how America handles taxes, healthcare, and spending. Whether it's good or bad depends entirely on your perspective and your bank account. Republicans see it as a necessary tax relief and government efficiency. Democrats see it as a gift to the wealthy paid for by the cuts for programs that help the poor. Elon Musk sees it as a betrayal because it didn't give him enough of what he wanted. And regular Americans, well, we'll find out in a few years whether this was the economic boom Trump promised or just another expensive government experiment funded by our children's futures. So we'll see. What is clear is that the bill represents a fundamental choice about what kind of country we want to be. Do we want to be a country that prioritizes tax cuts for the wealthy or healthcare for the poor? Do we want to invest in clean energy or double down on fossil fuels? Do we want to reduce the deficit or bet everything on economic growth? These aren't just policy questions, they're moral questions, and the answers will reshape America for decades to come. So, this is my deep dive into the big, beautiful bill. This is a long one, but hey, when you're covering legislation that affects every American, sometimes you got to go all the way through. And this is just touching the surface on everything that this bill encases. I was just trying to take out the top points that I think were going to affect everyday Americans. So let me know in the comments what you think. Is this the economy stimulus America needs, or just an expensive way to help rich people keep getting more of their money? Or are you Team Democrat, Team Republican, or Team Elon on this one? Don't forget to like this video if it helped you understand this massive bill. Subscribe for more deep political deep dives and ring that notification bell, and I'll talk to you guys soon. And happy 4th of July.